I'm going to call the Northwood Select Board to order on October 12th at 6 p.m. All those that can, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And next up is Citizens Forum. Anybody want to?
Mr. Chairman, do you want to take roll?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, normally we do that before the pledge, don't we? No. Okay. Well, let's go through a roll call. Jim?
Present.
Beth?
Here.
Tim?
Present.
Matt?
Present.
Hal? Walter, our town administrator? And Cheryl, are you the director of finance or our finance director?
Finance director, I guess.
Okay, finance director.
Finance extraordinaire.
That's finance director here in the paperwork. So.
Okay, good. Yeah, you're right. Okay, I'm going to skip the minutes until later so we can get to the next two items in order or sooner. So, third quarter financial report.
Business forum.
Jeez.
Slow down.
Well, I wish somebody could learn to read. Yeah, I was ready to say Citizens Forum, and then Matt interrupted me.
My fault. You said it.
Okay. Did anybody get any letters? Walter, any letters come in?
Nothing for citizens.
And nothing else? Okay. Tim, do you want to speak? Okay. So no Citizens Forum. I'm going to be very careful now. Okay. So in terms of ongoing business, if the board's okay with it, I'm going to hold off on the minutes until a little bit later so we can get directly into the finance report for the third quarter.
Okay.
Finance Director Cheryl Eastman.
Thank you. I had attached reports in your packet for the third quarter, 2021, and a couple points to notice. The revenues from September 30th, 2021 are up by $322,773 over the prior year, and that is a 27.12% increase. The rooms and meals tax we will be getting in December, so that's a large chunk that will come in, so that the revenues are looking good. Expenditure report shows an overall remaining balance of 30.73% of the budget as of September 30th, and the projected expenditures with all known encumbrances included through December 31 shows a remaining balance of $183,310. The last 3 months of the year are going to be kind of the tipping point, if there is one. Everything that we know about has been included in the expenditures, but the things that we don't know, that's, the snow, the whatever, the unknown things. So I hate to sound like a broken record, but we continue to look at this every week and rerun the numbers and keep an eye on it, and we will certainly be doing that through the rest of the year and see where we land from there.
Thank you, Cheryl. Walter, did you want to mention something else?
I just wanted to clarify on the revenues that there's, first of all, the opera funds are in that $321,000 amount. So, again, comparing year over year, that's something obviously didn't have it last year. So I just didn't want you to have the impression that the general revenues were up, that amount of money. But it does include, because that's where we're keeping the funds, is in the general fund. It does include that $225,000 in there.
That's a good point, because it's a one-off, because it didn't happen last year, but yeah.
Right, yeah. So overall then, more order of magnitude, 100,000, which is still good.
Yes.
Given
Yes.
given the situation, so.
Correct.
Yeah, I think, notably, motor vehicle registrations are up. Let's see, just looking down, I think there's, in terms of larger numbers, that seems to be the the one that's sticking out the most. Site plan fees, I have a large project that's been making its way through the planning board. That's up, 18,000%, or 1,800%, I should say. No, it is 18,000.
18,000.
Yeah. So again, just a couple of highlights, in terms of noting where we are this year versus last year on the revenue side. So you are correct, Hal, things are improved over last year in general.
Yeah, just order of magnitude 100,000, not,
Not the total 300, 322 that I quoted, because that included the ARPA grants.
do folks have questions for Cheryl?
So if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, just as Cheryl mentioned, we're monitoring this very, very closely. Obviously, we just, as of today, completed, our major road projects, to the tune of $330,000, of which some of that's going to come out of the budget. We have encumbered for that, but, we're going to just continue to see our balance whittle down as things come in that are unanticipated and not encumbered. So hopefully, as Cheryl mentioned, we are whittling away at what we had originally projected as a reserve, and I think now it's down somewhere around 175,000 or so.
183.
183, and that's going to get us through the next 2.5 months in terms of taking care of the things that we don't anticipate.
Yeah, the number was bigger last time she reported.
It was.
That
It
was
is.
just a month ago.
Yeah. and
A
so
lot
it's-
happens in a month.
Yeah.
Paid bills.
Yeah, it's going to be a close shave, but right now, I'm optimistic. I'm not sure how Cheryl feels.
Yeah.
Well, I think the weather is going to be a big factor, so
Yeah.
depending on what happens with that.
Well, we do have the ability to do a little bit more of our plowing, so that'll help a little bit. But yeah, I mean, big storm where we use up a lot of salt or something like that.
Yeah,
We
we just don't know at this
Where
point.
we have to
but-
pay for it, yeah, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions?
Mostly just, making sure that department heads are hearing the message loud and clear, Walter, in terms of where we're at and the need for certain levels of austerity, and not austerity per se, but just, it's not the year to get the thing you want, it's the year to get the thing you need.
Yeah, again, that's been kind of been the message since last
June.
spring, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
June, after town meeting. And I think department heads have done a very good job, managing their ways through, and only buying the things that are absolutely necessary, and holding back on other things just to wait and see, where things are going to end up as we make our way through the month of December, and see how things are going in terms of, as Cheryl mentioned, the weather and, some of the other things that we can't predict in terms of repairs and that type of thing. So, we'll, as I say, we'll keep an eye on it. It's a message at the department head meeting each month. So we'll make sure it's echoed again this week.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Matt, I'm going to the department head meeting on Thursday. I'll make a point to mention that.
Great.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, Cheryl, I got to say, well done. About a year and a half ago, Jim Hadley and I tried to do exactly what you did here on this encumbrance analysis, and it's time-consuming and it's difficult. So I just want to say I appreciate the effort on this, because this is really the best I've seen.
Thank you.
So it's really good. I think the one thing I would appreciate is if you and Walter would discuss perhaps sharing this when it comes time for the budget committee to look at 2021 expenditures, because they might start looking at it before year end. And my recollection is they often have these same types of discussions. Well, yes, we're at 80%, but we still have some of these other things to add or consider. So I understand you need to provide them with the official numbers, but please discuss with Walter whether you think it would be good and / appropriate to give them this insight also, because I find it extremely useful.
I think, basically, they will get the same package you got, for this meeting, so.
Okay, good.
So
Good.
that they will have that information, and, again, it's our best guesstimate, but it's a guiding tool that's going to allow us to, manage almost on a weekly basis, what's flowing out, versus what we have remaining, so.
Well, I think as long as, you're going down through meticulously, my experience is it's usually errors of omission, i.e. we missed accounting for something, as opposed to errors of commission, meaning we put the wrong number in. So, the fact that you've been going through this time after time after time makes me feel pretty comfortable that we're not missing anything other than perhaps, volumetric things like salt use and things like that.
Right.
So-
Yeah, I go through it line by line every time I update it and see what's already in there and what I know is coming. And
I mean, sometimes you're going to get some surprises as Bill comes in, but again, I think this is
We
really,
get those every week.
I think this is really well done. So
Good.
thank you.
I'm glad it's helpful.
If the board with the board's pleasure, I'd like to ask a related question. And Cheryl, that's the accounting software. I saw you're starting on that.
Yes.
Just give us some sense as to how you will handle the cutover. When we used to do these in industry, we used to sometimes run the one system in parallel to the other, which means extra work, double bookkeeping, and all that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Walter and I had a meeting with the reps from the software company last week, and it was kind of a kickoff meeting, and we did discuss this whole implementation plan and whatnot. Payroll, obviously you have to start running payroll January 1st, but we will be running concurrent parallel payroll runs, just to make sure
Okay.
that everything is working the way that it should be working. As far as the AP side, we will probably start that sometime in December, depending on which week it's going to fall on, and we'll run a couple parallel AP runs. But that doesn't have to start January 1st like payroll does because of the W-2s and everything. So that's kind of the plan, is when we get a little closer and after they build out the whole system for us, which they're working on now, converting everything over, then we'll have a closer idea when we get a little bit into close to the beginning of December, what week we're going to switch, if you will. But we're going to run for several weeks two systems just
Parallel.
to double check things.
Okay. And so the related question is, how have you accounted for the costs on that software in your reconciliation here? Have you put any of the costs for that in, or
The cost for the reconciliation, you lost
the
me.
cost for the software?
Oh, the cost for the software is coming, the initial purchase, down payment on it is coming out of the expendable trust fund, and then the, any support or license fees would be in the operating budget. And I believe off the top of my head, correct me, Walter, if I'm wrong, but the first year there are no support fees.
Right, and in lieu of support fees was the payment on the acquisition of the system. So, as Cheryl mentioned, we're utilizing the reserve fund that was established back in June.
Right.
And we're drawing approximately $20,000 out of that for the capital initial payment, and then the remaining payments will be in the operating budget as part of the support fee.
Okay. I guess I didn't realize there was enough money in that fund to cover everything. You're saying there is in terms of the initial purchase?
No. As I just said, there's $20,000 that's being paid for upfront over the
Out
next
of
3
that.
months out of that. And then,
Then we get into 2022.
right.
Oh, and then that's when, okay,
Yeah.
I got it now.
The second payment is in lieu of the support payment.
Right.
For the first year, they waived the support payment for the first year.
Right.
And then, the final payment will be in 2023.
Got it, okay, thank you. So we are covered and accounted for then on that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not going to, it's not going to impact, this year's budget,
Right.
Unless there's, funds remaining that we decide to utilize differently.
Got it, okay, thank you. Anything else on that? No, thank you, Cheryl, and again,
You're welcome.
well done.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to move on. I see planning board members are here, so we're going to move on to the capital improvement plan report presentation. So Tim or Bob?
You want to come up and sit?
No, but at least if you're going to talk, would you please use a mic, and you're welcome to sit, or, each of you grab a mic and...
You want to share a mic or grab that one, either one, or just lower it down or hold it, or go karaoke or anything you want?
I bet you Bob has some good moves.
Just make sure it's turned on.
Well, I'll kick off the discussion by saying that at the last planning board meeting, the planning board officially adopted the CIP that Bob developed. So I guess, Bob, you're going to do most of the talking, or Tim, do you want to say something first?
Very little of that, as you already stated, this is Bob Baby. He's done a wonderful job, so he's going to present it.
Thank you.
Instead of going over numbers, which is incredibly boring, in my opinion, I'd like to talk briefly about some of the purposes of the CIP.
Okay, hold on just a second, Bob. I see a
we get
couple...
one of those?
I
Yeah,
see
I do not have a copy of it.
board members looking at me enviously. Do we by any chance have any more of these? Susan?
I mean, it is in our packet, but it's a little hard to
I don't have,
see as
it wasn't in the digital packet.
You guys
It
can
was
have mine. 'cause
not
I
in the
looked
digital
at
packet?
it.
It wasn't? Let me see
move
what
that.
page it was
It
on.
was, it was,
Oh, no, it wasn't in
it was
the
on
packet,
the-
you're right.
It's on the website too, but...
No, I was able to get this from other sources.
I see how this is coming down tonight.
Well, I went to the meeting, so I got my copy.
When I was on the planning board, Hal, I made copies.
I'll tell you what,
we'll
Bob,
get
you
through
wanted to talk about some things
So-
in general first, so
Let me
let's...
talk about some things in general while we're getting copies of this. There's a couple purposes that come with the CIP. I think primarily why we started it, or I pushed for it, however many years, 4, 5, 6 years ago, was a record of planned upcoming expenditures for maintenance. Scuba gear going out of certification at the fire department, the school roof needing to be replaced at a certain point in time at a cost of $500,000 or whatever it was. Those kinds of things. What I found as a resident looking at town reports and budgets was wanting to know next year what are we going to get, what's going to happen. What are we going to get hit with? Because the warrant articles and the budgeting process are not forward-thinking beyond 1 year from town meeting, which is the whole purpose of the CIP. That being said, there are other aspects to it in the current process in that we collectively, planning board, are beholden to town departments for what they feel is needed in terms of capital purchase to run their departments. What I was emphatic about on this second round was, and prior town staff and I had some disagreements, would be a nice way of putting it, about the filtering process. What does it take to get on the CIP? Because if the planning board goes through the process developing it, or I do, or whatever, planning board adopts the CIP, that gives a bit of authorization. That's not the right word. Imprimatur, saying this is a legit purchase. The CIP, the planning board has added it to the CIP. It's has some validity, which is true in some extent. It still has to go through the filters of the warrant articles, through the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee when it actually gets time to vote, and then ultimately gets to the voters. So for round two, what I found in round one, there was an item called priority that was interpreted differently by every person I asked in terms of what's the priority for this project? Can your department function with this, with or without this capital purchase? Where does it rank with the rest of the items that you're coming in? And some people did, it was it ended up being meaningless. So I threw it out of the analysis. I think Tim is going to speak on that in a little bit. So the final aspect of this, and really the whole purpose of it, but the least implemented one, is the idea of smoothing out, what did you call it, the mountains and valleys and the waves?
Yeah, the wave
The
instead
tax rate. Yep.
peaks and
Instead of-
valleys, we're trying to make a wave.
For example, in this case, where is it? In 2025, the fire chief has said, if a safety complex concept in some sense is not on the ballot by that point in time, or we haven't made progress with it, he is requesting $2 million to refit the Ridge Station. Okay. So tax year total requests for 2024 are $452,000. The next year they're $2.452. That's a little bit of a swing. So the whole idea of the CIP is to say, yes, we can move that $2 million request over different funding mechanisms so they don't have to raise an additional $2 million in 1 year. Okay.
Bob, can I interrupt real quick? Or do you want me
Sure,
to
go
hold my
ahead.
questions for then? What's easier for you?
Pardon me?
Do you want me to ask now or hold my questions?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So on something like that, where that were to be a $2 million bond, theoretically, that's going to be spread across
Yes.
whatever the lifetime of that bond is. So the effective, ask for that year isn't in fact 2.4 million.
Correct, certainly.
So is that reflected on this document?
So do you all have copies of it at this point, or you at least see something? So let me give you the overview of this. All the projects that
It's all the ones on the end, I see it.
Yeah. All the projects are on the left. The asks are on the center left of the large black line, listed by year, described and color-coded by department. The right-hand side is the actual CIP where the numbers have been adjusted through various funding mechanisms. If you're looking at, for instance, a boxed line on the right, that means that request has been adjusted either in time frame or dollar figure or funding method.
So much more wavy than peaks and valleys at
Yes.
that point.
Yes. And to finish up my general statement, where that goes once we have this is the planning board hands it off to the Board of Selectmen or in town administration, it's out in the public. It's up to the Board of Selectmen to figure out, yes, we are going to propose this in a warrant article. We're not going to propose it, how we're going to fund it, drafting the language, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the standard budget process. I like to think of the CIP as a next year project. Ideally, nothing on the CIP that's in the CIP should be in the current year's funding budget. We should not have 2022 on this line. It should be 2023 because it's then at the point where it's either in the town budget or it's on a warrant article or petition or something else. It's current funding method, which is Board of Selectmen and Budget Committee. Ideally, we'd like to get to that. Let me make a final point before I turn this over to Tim. And Tim and the Planning Board have been very gracious in giving me credit for this. I will be happy to take not all of the credit for it because there's a lot of other people involved. Linda and Susan did a lot of the legwork in getting all the requests out for the town, but from the town departments. This has grown beyond the capacity of me to handle. I have a more than full-time job. I'm a volunteer. I've stepped down from planning board chair. The items that Ginger Dole, budget chair, I believe that she's budget chair, have requested to is to add some more financial aspects to it. A lot of the back and forth between planning board or myself and the town departments was very helpful, but I couldn't devote the amount of time needed to answer questions and do some other things to this. I think where we can go with this is that I'll be happy to help crunch the numbers, but we need to have some help, whether that's from town departments or Mr. Johnson or others, as far as getting some of the legwork done would be appreciated, and it'll be a much more complete document. Sure, go ahead, Al.
Bob, your comments, I believe, though, are based on the assumption that we stick with the current
Yes.
process. Is that correct?
There's some, for instance, Ginger's points about having, looking at the revenue of existing funds. That's regardless of the process.
It should be, yes.
It should be. Some of the past purchases that were on, lease payment 3 of 5 for a tanker truck or
Right.
whatever. Those kinds of things that I know about in the back of my head, but it takes me longer to go through either prior town reports or other things to find and incorporate in. Those kind of things, should be fairly straightforward to get from, with a little bit of work from town staff. But yes, there are other aspects in the refit of the purpose and procedures that we can talk about.
Well, I think we can have that discussion. This year, I think, was still a little bit of a transition year. Walter is still relatively new, Cheryl still relatively new, but I think we have some opportunities here, especially when you look at some of the budget things she's done already. So I think we have some opportunities here. Walter's got a lot of experience with CIPs, as I think you do too, from Amherst, Cheryl.
Yeah, some, yes.
Yeah,
Not as
so
much as Walter,
I think we can deal with that aspect, I think, pretty nicely.
I'm not entirely going away from it,
Well, I hope not.
because it's something I want to keep. I think it's an important tool, but I think it's
Do folks have other questions for Bob?
Well, I got one.
Go ahead, Jim.
That I think is very important that you touched on, but said there was no resolve, was prioritizing. Do you have any suggestions as to how to make that happen?
one of, I think, Tim, can you answer that one? Yeah, that's been you know better than I do.
So, without question, when this started, I made it pretty clear to the board how I felt about CIPs, and that's predicated on the fact that having seen, I've been in business all my life, and having seen many a CIP that was done, huge amounts of money spent in some cases, and I would use Camp Yavin to spent $70,000 2 years ago to have a bunch of people come in from Ohio and do a CIP, and within weeks ignored it. It just astounds me. And so I think a CIP, if it really is implemented and used by all parties, it's a wonderful thing. And so I would like to say that looking at the process that we have now, looking at the fact that I think Bob is being honest with us and would like to have some relief. We've expected over the years for him to do the lion's share, if not really all of it. I mean, he can give some other people some credit, but he's done it. So my statement to what you said is that we need to look at how we're doing it. And the system is just wrong where the prioritizing is at the end of the system now. So we've done all of this work here. Excuse me, Bob has done all of this work here. And the planning board is not allowed to question whether this item or that item is truly needed. It was explained to us in no uncertain terms that that's not our job. I think that confused some of us a little bit, but regardless of that, our job was simply to take what was given to us by the town department heads and put it on a piece of paper, which Bob did very well. And then it moves on to the next step, in this case, you guys. And it's your guys then, hopefully, to take a look at it and decide whether it's a priority or not. Our job was to smooth it out, and that's the second third or the third of that page. That being said, in amongst all of this, we were given by Linda Smith, I believe, a study by Dave Stack, who was a town administrator here some time ago. It's an excellent article, I think, through the Municipal Association. Certainly, it's the town has it. You could get it from Linda if you wanted. And also another report from a lady by the name of Phil Moore, who quite emphatically says that a CIP is not a wish list. So from Mr. Stack, he shows or tells us how he has changed the system, first in Pembroke and then in Bow as he moved along. And I'm very interested in that. And the board is going to, the planning board, we are going to have some discussions in the very near future. And a lot of the discussion or a lot of the desire is for what you just said. We need to prioritize earlier in the system. And that, Mr. Stack's system is that there is a committee in the beginning. And that committee is comprised of a certain amount of people. Now, his is a planning board, a budget committee, it's inclusive. I'm very, very interested in that. I think the board is interested in that. We won't make the final decision, but I think we are going to talk about it and then pass the buck on to you guys. And I think, as my understanding is, if we want to do something like this, it would have to go to a warrant article and be approved by the town. But we are recognizing that maybe the system that we have is not quite what we would like it to be. And I think the biggest issue in that is how the prioritizing is at the very end and rather at the beginning. You know, it's cumbersome to not be able to look at this in the beginning as to whether we want that to go through the whole system. So I hope I've been clear of that. And all I really wanted to let you know out of that spiel is that the planning board is going to look at this and talk about it and go on from there. The next step, if we approve something or think something should happen, then I think that would go to the select board. And if we all can agree on something, that would have to go to the taxpayers for approval. And I hope all of that happens. There's some issues, and we'll have to deal with that. But the system is not quite what it is. And frankly, the planning board, the rest of us, do not have the computer expertise, with the exception of possibly Hal as the select board rep, but that's not really his job, you know, as a select board job. None of the rest of us have the expertise that Bob has to put this on paper. I'm sure we can muddle through it and get something done, but I think a committee would be much more beneficial, a committee that in fact talks to all of the department heads, and then once we have all that, that's compressed and discussed, and it includes, Mr. Stacks includes the town financial person and everybody else, so that, some of this stuff can be vetted. I have some serious questions as to the costs in there, whether they're accurate, where did they come from, et cetera. And we kind of have a history in this town of just throwing things out and not really knowing what the price is. And if we had a financial person in there involved, and we really looked at this stuff, as if we say we want this for $125,000, is it really cost $125, or is it $85, or is it $225? So I hope that answered your question. It was a long-winded answer. Sorry.
No, that's fine. It did. It just provoked a few more questions, because I would agree with what you're saying. You're putting all this work in. To me, sitting here, I'm looking at things in numbers with no input that you guys have gotten through the planning board and department heads. And so to me, it would be very helpful to also have suggestions come with it, type of thing, and project it out, because you did do all the legwork and you did engage with all that. And I agree to have financial people involved and other people involved to vet out some of the things. So I guess my overall question to us is, how do we kind of make that happen?
Okay, I want to speak to this, because Tim and I are on the same wavelength. I was involved with the CIP committee in Hudson at exactly the same point, where they were struggling with exactly the same issues, and we had to, take a step back and really think about all the things that Tim said, priorities, how do you engage the finance folks, how do you engage the department heads in a meaningful way, and you have to be careful. I mean, you ask too much of them and it becomes a paper chase. But if we have a good committee, and we have a committee of the right folks, I know Walter's worked on some of these before and has been successful. I think what we have to focus on is getting the process that we want to take to the voters through the planning board and then to the select board. I believe the planning board will come up with something good. And I'm hoping that when you guys see it, then you'll agree it's good and agree to put it on the ballot. And I say that knowing that in Hudson, it took us iterations to finally get it to where we want. But at least we took the step forward. And right now, with the system that we have, we can still continue to do some of this stuff, but it won't be the step forward that will really move the town forward. And so I just ask your patience till the planning board sorts out how they want to set up this committee and what they want to recommend to the voters, and then we'll talk about that at the select board meeting, and hopefully we can then put it on the ballot for the voters. But that's the process. If we want to make this kind of step change that we're talking about, it needs to go to the voters.
Okay, I'm a little confused because I'm new to this, but so what goes to the voters? The CIP or the process?
The process.
Oh, the process
The
has to
process
go.
of setting up the committee and having the committee do all this type of stuff.
Okay.
That's what has to go to the voters, because it's a change in how we govern, essentially.
In process, okay.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, planning board currently has this authorization. If it stays within planning board, the planning board can establish its own subcommittee without needing to go to the vote.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If the town decides that the CIP should be removed from the planning board and establish its own committee, then it needs to go to the vote. That's my understanding.
I agree with that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Just to be
Okay,
clear.
so-
It's not that it has to go to the voters process this year.
Right,
It's
okay,
that
yeah.
If we decide to go that way, then it would need a warrant article.
Yeah, I guess I was leaning the other way only because of some of the comments about the support and all those types of things, where it'd be more difficult.
that still can be within the planning board, or underneath the responsibility of the planning board to establish its own CIP committee.
Okay.
As long as the planning board ultimately decides whether they're going to accept the recommendations and adopt it.
So that'd be something you do internally, that would have nothing to do with us? Okay.
Theoretically, if planning boards decides that we want to, I'll say we collectively, want to retain control of the CIP, then yes, there would be no need for a warrant article. We could establish its own committee, whoever by warrant budget committee and the selectmen and whoever the zookeeper.
Go to the zookeeper, Walter.
Bobby, I think you have another question.
So, obviously, if the responsibility were to come out of planning board into a new committee or a different structure, obviously that goes to the voters. But the process itself has some flexibility outside of that, meaning rather than reinventing the wheel, wouldn't something as simple as shuffling some of the order of these steps have a fairly large impact? Meaning, if department heads came to the BOS first and said, here's what we're thinking about, and we take the red pen to that list first, before you ever see it, that streamlines your workload substantially, or whoever is, foolish enough to say yes next, streamlines that workload significantly, meaning that you're not going to put hours of work into a spreadsheet containing items that the board's never going to actually support going on a warrant.
Yes. The caution I would have
Go ahead.
is that, no criticism intended, your terms are 3 years, our terms are 3 years. It is let me give you the analogy. You can put off painting your house for as long as the residents can tolerate its appearance. You as select board can pick a capital item off the ballot, off the budget for as long as you want to. That does not mean that the need to fix it goes away. Planning board does not, because we do not vote on this and generate the warrant articles and review it as the budget committee, we do not have a fiscal pony in that aside from being taxpayers. That's, I think, a large reason why the planning board was given this process rather than the board of selectmen. Again, I'm not pointing a finger at criticism of anyone, but there are reasons for taking I think it's the gimlet eye to a budget as a budget committee, as a select board, and planning board. I see it slightly different.
So I'd like to try to explain my problem here, because I do have a problem. Number one, I'd like this to stay within the planning board. And I have not yet we haven't talked about this at length at the planning board. We've just skirted around it because we had to get this ready. And we are going to have an in-depth conversation. My queries, mostly to James, our town planner. Again, my problem is there's no vetting at the beginning. So let's say the planning board basically made a committee that included what Dave Stack has deemed a committee should be. And that committee meets. I still do not believe that that committee, because it's part of the planning board, can vet, can question the validity or necessity or priority of these items, where if this was turned over to the select board and the select board made a committee, then that committee could in fact vet, prioritize, etc. So whilst I don't want to give it up for the planning board, and I haven't decided one way or the other how I will vote, I have a lot of questions, because truly I would rather see this stay at the planning board. But my problem is the very question that was asked, and that's where I keep having a really big question in my mind as the right way for the town. You know, is the right way for the town, for the planning board to give it up so that it can be looked at early on and not a lot of time wasted, because there's time wasted here, the way we do it.
Right.
So that's my problem. And, you know, and we haven't had that discussion yet.
Right.
The whole point here is to let you know that we're going to have the discussion. Hal will be there, and certainly, I'm sure, we'll bring back whatever we discuss to you. But that's the crux of my problem, is the vetting. I just feel that it should be done early on. Is there any way that the planning board can do that? And I'm not asking you, I'm going to ask James, because he's a very intelligent young man, and we might have to get some sort of a legal, I don't know, whether it should even go that far. We're just trying to figure out what's the best thing for the town, because it's not quite working as smoothly, and with Bob doing less, it will be less smooth. So that's why we're looking at it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think the vetting process is going to be smooth either way, whoever does it. You know, there's going to be issues
Well, true,
on
but
whoever
can
does
we
it.
legally, can the planning board legally
Oh,
vet
I
it?
see your point, but vetting is probably an important process to do, however it gets done.
True.
And I love his analogy, because you can't just keep kicking the can. Somewhere along the way, something's going to have to
Right.
get put in there. But I think, you know, if we trust the department heads to be honest in what they're putting in. Another important point you said, Tim, was it's not a wish list. Does everybody know that? The department heads or whatever know that, no, we're looking at this point for important things to plan ahead so they don't get broke and we have a bigger problem fixing it down the road. But there's also priorities in that, because, you know, we only have what we have to be able to bring to the voters.
I think we've discussed it also with them. It's semantics. So what you might think is a wish list, I might not, as a department head. You know, so that creates the problem, and therefore that's why, in my opinion, we need a committee that would include several different groups. There's just two or three, well, let's say three. Planning board, budget committee, and select board. They run the town. I mean, you can pretend whatever you want, and there's about 50 people at the very most that are running the town. So we need a good selection of that group who would look at this realistically and, A, is it a wish list or not, and then what is the priority? And I think we need that earlier on than we're getting now. Right now, it's the tail end, and I think we need it earlier on. So how do we accomplish that is what I would like to figure out,
Okay.
So that it's fair to everybody. But, I mean, there's some things on there that I absolutely think are a wish list, and if you went to that person, they would look at me like I'm absolutely crazy. I have to have that. I have to have that. And I'm sure I'll be vocal about some of those when it all gets out,
Yeah, that's
So-
a good point.
But, I mean, everybody has a different idea what's
Okay.
important. So,
I just want to, again, emphasize, I think a better process is important, and we just need to have that discussion
hash it out.
and then figure out how we move the town forward, because I'm convinced this will help the town. So we just need to get through it, and I'm just hoping the board supports whatever approach we take, because it will take some time to get it working smoothly. Anything else for Tim or Bob? If not, I really
Thanks for all your
appreciate
hard
you
work
guys
on it.
coming in. Thank you very much, and thanks for all the effort.
If we could get a copy of this in like that day stack, this kind of.
I-
They're on the-
section of the website.
Yeah,
Linda to post everything.
Okay.
yeah,
It's really good information.
yeah. Well, thanks again,
Thank you, gentlemen.
gentlemen. Very, very, very nice. Thank you. Yeah, I think we can do some good stuff on this. Okay, we're going to move on now to the minutes. Thank you. or, yeah, we'll do the minutes next. So, the minutes of September 28th. Does anybody have any adjustments or edits before we ask for a motion?
Yes, I have two.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Under the appointment of me being the fire chief chaplain, that's on page 4.
Yes?
Fire chaplain, not chief. Line 24. It should be 1 abstain. I abstained from the vote. I think it read 4-0. On page 4, line 24.
Yeah. Okay. Other comments or questions?
And then under the public session on page 5, line 44, you just got my first initial wrong, that's all.
Okay. You got those, Walter? I think Susan does. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm looking at the wrong one.
Page 5, line 44.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Do you want him to go over both those, Susan? Okay. You're all set? Okay.
No.
Okay. Any other edits or adjustments? Okay.
So moved.
Well, hold on just a second. I do have one suggestion. It's when Mark was here and he was talking about the defibrillators and stuff, I would just say as an additional edit or suggestion, we ask Susan to go through and wherever it says the company, actually put the name that Mark was referring. And I'm going to suggest that Mark help her do that just so that we get it accurate, because there was a couple of things in here that didn't quite read, smoothly to me. I got a little bit confused as to which company we were talking about, and I got a little bit confused about which features we were talking about and things like that. And
Yeah,
I think,
Susan, kind of like on line 26, I'm sorry, Hal, because I see her like perplexed up there. See on line 26 at the very end, on page 3, it says the other company.
yeah,
That makes that's what he's talking about.
That
Maybe
type of
put the
thing.
name of the company
yes,
there
that's
versus.
exactly what I'm talking
It's
about.
probably a bad example, because the rest of that sentence is that they're called
Right,
Soul.
it said it at the end, but
Yeah.
that just jumped out at me, but
But there's one a couple-
it says it,
Up a little farther
yeah,
on the stuff.
on line 15, it says another company.
I just, in terms of me reading it, I just got a little bit backwards and forward on it. And I just think we can make it a little bit clearer if we do that. And let's just make sure we match up the company names with what things they have. Because, like at the CIP hearing at the planning board, Ginger was talking about Zoll, for example. She was under the impression that there were no differences in terms of capabilities, and the Zoll is the one that has the ability to transmit the heart monitoring real time.
Yeah.
And so, I look at this and I worry that, we get it mixed up with others. So let's just get it as clear as we can, and I don't have a problem with just delegating it to Susan and Mark just to get it that way, because they're the most knowledgeable anyway. So that would be my suggestion on that. So with those suggestions, do I have a motion to approve as we discussed? And a
Second.
Second. Any further discussion?
Very good.
If not, thank you. Wait, we need to
We should vote.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
And
I'm
you're
going to abstain, I wasn't here.
Okay, so 4-1, 4-0-1. Okay, great. That was the minutes. Cheryl did leave, okay, good. Walter, do you want to go over the consent agenda?
Sure. So the consent agenda for October 12th, 2021 includes a payroll manifest that was dated October 4th, batch number 17935 for $74,898.59. There's also a accounts payable manifest dated October 12th, 2021, a batch number 17940 for $540,462.82. And The most notable expense included in this particular manifest is the $500,000 payment to the school district for their continued operating costs. We also had an additional accounts payable manifest dated October 12th, batch number 17944, for $728.83. We also have, under our property tax exemptions, an application request for a veteran's tax credit for Patrick Graham for property at map 117, lot number 1.
Okay, does anybody want to take anything off the consent agenda and vote on it separately? If not, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
That's a 5-0. Okay, thank you. Moving on, Walter, your report and any action you have for us.
Okay. So for October 12th, staffing update, the position of Deputy Finance Director and Administrative Assistant remains vacant for now, and those duties have been divided amongst other staff, and other than for people that had scheduled time off, that seems to be working out okay. We are going to continue to search for someone to prepare board meeting minutes, but fortunately Susan has agreed to help us out in the interim. And in the Assessing and Building Department, Administrative Assistant Carol Manter has been reclassified now to full-time, and she is picking up a number of the duties that Paul was previously doing under the Select Board's Administrative Assistant. So so far so good, and we're able to meet those demands, and that position, again, will just remain vacant for the time being until we find that, the workload doesn't, can't be handled with the people that we have, so. Moving on to building repairs and painting, work repairs to the community center entrance have been completed. That includes the new deck and handicap ramp, and some work on some paving for the handicap ramp. So that work has been completed, and additional work will be completed on the town office building, which is a replacement of a couple of rotted windows on the east side of the building. That should be completed within the next couple of weeks. There is a request to, it was originally decided that we would do just a portion of the siding on the east side of the community hall because of the deterioration of the clapboards and so forth. And over the last few months, it was realized that it's continued to deteriorate in other areas above what was originally planned to be replaced. So there was a recommendation to go ahead and replace the entire side.
Now, the east side is the big side, the front, what,
Yes,
you're looking at the building, the left-hand wall?
that's
The
correct.
school street side.
Yeah,
Yeah, School Street.
School
side.
Street side. Yeah, I think that's facing east. I think that's why it's in such bad shape.
East or south?
Go up tomorrow when the sun comes up.
Right. So we have a quote from a contractor to do the entire side. It's $11,628 to replace that siding. His initial quote for doing the lower section was right around $6,000. So it's an additional $5,000 plus to replace that, and I would recommend that the board authorize that work to be done, and hopefully the contractor is going to be on schedule to get that done this fall.
So do you want to vote on that?
I do, because it's above
So-
my limit.
Okay. So how would you like the motion to read?
So if we had a motion to accept the proposal from Home Repairs Plus by Nate Smith in the amount of $11,628 to replace all the siding on the School Street side of the community hall.
I'd like to have it done by full weather sets in, right?
That's the plan, yes. Yep.
I mean, he did the front pretty timely as far as I'm concerned.
He's waiting for approval.
Can he start immediately then? Pretty quickly?
He didn't say immediately, but he'll start as soon as his schedule will allow. He's finishing up a couple of other jobs as well.
And that balance of 24.5 in the expendable trust includes, if we were to make this expenditure?
That's correct. That's correct. As a just additional information, this will bring the total work done on the community center and the town building to approximately $40,000, which will be withdrawn from the Facilities Committee Expendable Trust Fund, which, after adding the 2021 appropriation, was approximately $64,565, plus whatever interest may have been accrued. So it should leave a balance in that account of about $24,565 at the end of 2021. And the painting quotes are still being pursued, but now that's been put off for the spring. So we're going to secure a contract this winter and get the painting done on both the library and the community hall as soon as the weather is appropriate in the spring.
Did we make a motion on that yet?
No, we
Do
do
you,
not.
do you want it as like an up to 12 instead, or do you want us to just approve the quote as it is?
Well, I was going to ask a question with that, because it says if there's hidden damages, how do we, we take something down, found something else, how do we deal with that?
I'd like a more boards, got more plywood,
Right.
so what is it, 11?
In the building that age.
Yeah, we would have to look at, the other resources that we have, or come back and, address it. But, yeah, again, it could be 15,000. I can't tell you, exactly what it is. All I have is what I have right now
Right.
as far as.
Is that what you're
I'm saying, I mean, it
implying,
needs to
Matt?
be done. I'm saying if we make an up to
Right.
motion, if we made it up to $15,000, assuming he's not going to make it $15,000 just because he's a trustworthy person. So I don't want to have to come back to the table for the sake of an extra $1,500.
Job and then.
Right.
Well, is there a way to do what you're suggesting, Matt, with Walter authorizing any deltas because of change in scope?
You get for $5,000, right? So if we made it 12, he can add the other 3,000 on.
Right.
If we have to. Let's make it 12 now, and he can add 3,000 if he had to
Oh, I see
later
what you're
on.
saying. Yes, that's what
Right.
it is.
I'll just split it out.
His discretion.
Well, however we comfortable.
Sneaky.
Yeah, I do have to say, I have a little bit of a problem with that because,
Let's just make it 15,000.
yeah, because we need to tell the folks the real
Yeah,
number.
it's within the rule, but outside the intent to do it that way.
Yeah,
So I'd rather we just approve up to $15,000 and trust Walter to keep an eye on the project.
Yeah, I think that's the better approach. That way the town folks know what we're spending
Then just keep us abridged if it goes over,
over the 11.
so we know.
Yeah. Are you comfortable with that?
I am.
Okay, so what's the motion, Matt?
To approve an expenditure of up to $15,000 for repairs to be made at the community center by Home Repairs.
And do I have a second on that? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. Yeah, I mean, we just got to get this work done.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been delayed and
If we
delayed.
don't get it done, it's going to cost us more
Bob-
because we wait.
Bob's analogy hit right on the head there almost. So, okay. Yeah, and we have the money, we can then, when we get to the budgeting process and the warrants, we can decide how much to ask for in terms of replenishing that fund.
Correct.
But that's a separate discussion because we just can't not keep putting off the work. So, okay. Walter, why don't you continue then, please?
Okay, so still working with Eversource on the lighting upgrade program.
I promised it to you 2 weeks ago.
I'm hoping it'll be...
You gotta hit that record player to get that skip out of it. Crowd.
I hope it's done before I retire. But, yeah, again, they have more excuses than Carter's got pills, is what my grandmother used to say.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay. Keep
still
pushing.
working on it.
Keep pushing.
The road paving schedule, reclaiming and paving began last week on the 6th, and all the work was completed today on the portions of Bow Street, Harmony, and Bigelow. There was a problem that was discovered on Harmony, which is going to require us to go in and do some structural work on the subsurface of the road towards the end of where the paving project was done. Talked to Chris about it. He's worked out an arrangement with the paving company to get that section repaired, within the next week or so, and it can be done with town forces. And so it was something that was unforeseen. It wasn't obvious. It was the weight of the heavy equipment actually created a failure in the subsurface, so it needs to be dug out, put in with suitable material, drainage addressed, and then repaired. So we don't anticipate that it's going to be a additional cost to do that as far as the paving company is concerned, but those discussions will take place tomorrow. So, but the other streets, I've driven all of them. I think they came out well. I think the company did a good job, and the weather was perfect. Great paving. So.
Walter, you have a question?
So I just got a quick question on Harmony. I mean, can we tie that road failure to all the development that's been done up there in the past 2 years? They don't have a bond for road maintenance?
It's the material that's under the road.
Sub-base.
After they ground it, they compacted it, and every time you go over it, compact it. It's probably 20 feet below the culvert, so the water sits in there, and just the more you compact it and drive over, it just gets squishy. It
like a
happens
sponge.
on regular jobs. So Chris called me yesterday. I went up and looked at it. Actually, I marked out. It's roughly coming out to the center line, about 75 feet by 10 feet. We got to cut out and dig out, fix up. So
Okay.
With some big,
dig out all the basically the clay and the muck and stuff. Lay some fabric down, some big like 6-inch gravel, build it up, compact it, and then trim it up 1.5 inches and have them come back and pave it. So do it now before we top coat it and.
right.
Okay. It's still all passable, safe now. It's just a matter of fix it while the paving guy's still in.
But you're saying the work to get it prepared for that will be done by us, Walter?
Yes.
Okay, so that's within,
Yep.
all right, okay. Any other questions related to that? Okay. Thank you, Walter. Go ahead.
Okay, so just, we did complete the Japanese knotweed treatment in the 6 locations that were authorized by the board, so hopefully, it's a 2-step process. They'll be back next year, and hopefully we can expand the areas of treatment for next year as well, and this should, more than likely be an ongoing expense to stay ahead of it and address it as it pops up from year to year.
You'll keep in contact with the Vermont mowers, you said?
Yes, yeah, we have a 2-year contract with them, so they'll be back.
They also said they do it in Vermont, they could maybe get certification in New Hampshire to spray.
Yes, they did, yep.
Oh,
You didn't know about that?
no, did not.
We talked about that at the last meeting.
Well, that went right over my head.
They're certified sprayers in Vermont.
Oh, so when
They
they...
roadside and spray in Vermont, they're roadside in New Hampshire, but they're not certified sprayers in New Hampshire.
Got
So
it.
if they see a problem while they're mowing, they can address
Yeah.
it also. So it's something to think about.
So on the FY '22 department head budgets, Cheryl and I have met with all the department heads and reviewed their proposed budgets. Again, we had great cooperation, spent a lot of hours, going over numbers, and, once again, I can't say enough about Cheryl's ability to provide the documentation and the support information to help get the, facts and figures. And I'm going to be able to present to you tonight in hard copy the operating budget that's been recommended by both myself and the department heads. And again, it's really just to start the process for you to review between now and next Tuesday, which will be our first work session, which will kick off with the police department, and then into the land use budget, and then into the fire department budget, and maybe some other things on the side if time allows, depending on how the process goes. So that's, again, as we discussed, next Tuesday, budget work session, beginning at 6. Discussion about a meeting on November 2nd. I know Hal mentioned he has a conflict, but it may be a situation where we actually may not need that, depending on how much we can, complete in the prior meeting. So,
We'll see how things go.
yeah, that's...
Maybe we just have a little bit later start.
Yeah. So that's penciled in the schedule at this point in time, but not locked in pen at this point.
Walter, did anybody indicate that they wanted to join that meeting remotely? Should I
I offered,
bring in that equipment?
I haven't had any takers.
Okay, great.
So,
Fine, Susan.
yeah, I think they appreciate the offer. And again, that may change, depending on how the first night goes. But I'll let you know if that does.
Great.
Moving on to the, and I'll, before I hand out the budget worksheets at the end of the meeting, I'll kind of go through. It looks very daunting when you look at it, but not only this year are we, getting a new software system in place, but we're changing our whole chart of accounts. And once again, to Cheryl's testament, she's been able to marry the old and the new so that there is a reference, back to prior years, just for historical information, especially with the default budget and the prior year's expenditures as well. So, again, a ton of work, a ton of detail. I think you'd be pleased with it in terms of all the work that's put into it so far. So we talked a bit about the finance software when Cheryl was here. As she mentioned, there was a kickoff meeting last week, and we're looking at, as she said, the target of January 1 to go forward with that program. And right now, they're in the process of preparing our data, our existing data and history, to be migrated into the new system. So again, we'll be able to use that as a reference as well in the future, at least for the past 2 or 3 years. So excited to get that started, and I think it's going to be a great value to the town and to the department going forward. Still working with a consortium for the franchise agreement renewal with Atlantic Broadband. We met last week, and the group agreed to prepare a survey to go out to cable customers and non-cable customers to talk about the service and the availability of cable TV or lack thereof. So that's being worked on now, and it'll probably go out sometime in November. And that committee meets again in December to keep the process going forward. On the road service management program, Chris Brown and I, the DPW foreman, met with the representatives from Stratford Regional Planning Commission again to go through the evaluation and the needed treatments for the roads, and that process has gone very well. Bob Strobel has also sat in on a couple of meetings. He wasn't able to make the last one, but we've been able to put together a plan basically for the next 5 years, and in draft form, lock down the 22 plan for discussion during the budget process, and still looking to have the completed plan sometime by the end of October or perhaps early November, depending on their manpower situation at the Planning Commission. But that process has gone very well, and I think it's been a good exercise for the whole operations to look at different types of treatment versus just paving. And I think there's an opportunity to get more for our money, so to speak, by looking at this in more of a expanded vision versus just doing, in terms of reconstructing the roads that need them, but also making sure that our good roads stay good, which is critical, which includes, different type of asphalt treatment, crack sealing, those types of things, so. So that is going forward and should be, I say, finished on schedule.
So that'll still be in time for us to include in our budget discussions then?
Yes, we have the 22 data, so we'll be presenting that when you meet with the department heads for the Public Works Department. And as mentioned, the budget work section on the 19th, regular board meeting on the 26th. And that's all I have right at the moment.
Walter, there was one topic, the transfer station improvements.
Oh, I missed that? I'm sorry. Yeah, I skipped right over that. So, as authorized, the new waste oil heater's been installed in the DPW building, which is now handling all the waste oil that's being collected at the transfer station. So, it's a win-win situation in terms of cuts our heating cost basically down to almost nil, depending on the flow of waste oil and the temperature, obviously. But it also eliminates the expense of having to dispose of the waste oil as well. So I think that's going to have a very positive rate of return over the next few years and be something that's going to benefit the facility in the long run. And the additional paving that was approved has been completed, and that certainly is going to help operations as well. So those two projects are now complete.
Yeah, things are looking pretty good there with that paving.
Getting the pad down, it's a matter of, you gotta get some 6x6 and build a little salt shed for the public, get the
Yes, it
paving
does
pad, yeah,
freeze
so.
up,
Sand shed.
yeah. Okay.
Also.
Any questions for Walter on his report? I think we're making some great progress, Walter. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, does anybody want to take a break, 5-minute bio break, or do we want to push on? I don't see anybody jumping up out of their chair, so we're going to move on to old business. We've got the town auction of town-owned property coming up this Saturday at the K-8 school. Walter, you want to give us an update?
Just that, there's been a lot of interest in a number of different properties, both here in the office as well as to the auctioneer. So we're hoping that there'll be a good turnout and that will create an environment for, getting us good prices for our properties, but the goal being getting them back on the tax roll, as many as possible. And obviously, if the properties don't sell, there is a window that we would entertain offers now that we have offered them from the public and they didn't sell. And then, of course, I would recommend that we look at a similar process next spring to go ahead and see if we can't move some of the other properties that may not sell during the process. But there's approximately 30 properties that are on the list, and we're hoping that that's going to bring us some fair dollars and also get those properties back on the roll. Just to remind you, if you're interested, the auction will be held at the elementary school in the gymnasium / cafeteria, I guess now. And registration will start at 10 a.m. and the auction will start at 11. And it'll be a fairly quick process. This auctioneer will move the property right along, and it might take, he said, maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours at the most. So obviously, looking forward to getting that done and behind us. So, in the meantime, as I said, both Jared and Susan and Linda and myself have been fielding questions, but it's difficult, because a lot of the questions are what if or can we, and you really can't determine those until you know exactly what people might be interested in doing with property. So it's caveat emptor,
Right.
and do your due diligence as much as possible.
Questions on that? I have to say, in just general discussion with folks, I think people are pretty well aware of what's going on. I've had a lot of people ask, similar to you, ask me questions, which I obviously pass on down to these folks. I guess, Walter, I just want to ask it publicly. I think I have some interest in some of these. Is there any restrictions or ethical concerns with me bidding on any of these?
No, I think, again, as a member of the public, you're really, representing yourself as a member of the public, and there's no secret squirrel stuff going on. I mean, it's basically all open. The auctioneer will control the bidding process, and you'll be required to register just like any other bidder or any other board member would like to, or employee or whatever, so.
Good. Good. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of anxious to see how that goes. I think, we can get it on a regular basis so we don't create a backlog like we have, and I think it's a good start.
We still had more properties, didn't we? We didn't do the whole Big West.
We still have some, there was some that are still in question about whether we actually can sell them. We didn't enter any of the properties that have been taken in the last 3 years because of the policy, the repurchase policy. So yes, and then unfortunately we'll probably be taking a few more properties next couple of days, based on the tax collector's tax deeding process. So yes, it will be an ongoing process, but hopefully we can put a dent in our large inventory that's been on the books for a number of years, and
Decade.
yeah, and so hopefully I know the auditors will be happy.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody, if the taxes due are $25,000 and it sells for $50,000, we only get the $25,000. The court decides who gets the other $25,000. Well, actually, this spoke. We get $25,000, the auctioneer gets $2,500, and the court decides who gets the balance. We don't necessarily recoup the whole auction price. So just, when you start hearing the numbers, if they go up, don't get too excited once it goes over the tax
So we're
amount.
not funding the CIP, is that what you're saying?
I'm just trying to say, exercise some restraint there, because it's what's, our net is what the taxes due were less. We get back the taxes plus any expenses, that's it. Anything you want to add to that, Walter?
No, other than, I just wanted to clarify, if the prior owner is unknown or unavailable, that's when it goes to the court for disposition. But
Oh,
that,
yeah.
fortunately, is a service that's provided by the auctioneer as part of his fee. So, but we don't have to worry about that. If there's change left over, he's in charge of making sure that gets into the right hands.
Okay, then if there's no other questions, I'm going to move on to the town facilities use policy. You may recollect that we reviewed this last time. I guess I'll open it up for discussion, or whether or not the people are comfortable enough with it to vote on approving it tonight. What's your pleasure?
Read right to me.
Other comments or
You
questions?
got rid of Glendale, right?
Yeah, there was just a couple of amendments from the draft that was presented the last time, a reference to a facility in another town, and then there was a reference to changing one of the requirements for on the limitation from 25 people, that it may be versus shall be limited to that amount.
Yeah.
Those were really, I recall, the only two things that were commented on. So.
Well, if we're comfortable with it, how about a motion to approve the draft that we have from Walter?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And discussion.
Very good.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
All right.
Right?
Okay, that's 5-0.
Love new policies.
Yeah, another policy. I got to tell you, Walter, I really appreciate you getting the reviews out and moving this along.
Well, it's
No,
good to,
auction, policies, everything I've been asking for. Thank you.
He's doing it all for you, Beth.
all about you, Beth. It's all about you.
So I think we keep Beth happy if we keep one of these coming up regularly, so.
Yes.
Okay, we ready to move on to new business? And now it's the, I guess, the Highway and Facilities Committee status. Walter, do you want to start the discussion for us on that?
Sure. So I believe you're aware that there have been some resignations on the committee, and I believe, including Betsy Coburn's recent resignation, which I provided you a copy of, both on this committee as well as the oversight of the community hall. And certainly want to thank Betsy for her efforts. And with a couple of other resignations back in last spring, that really only leaves members of, two members of the Select Board, Beth and Tim, and a representative from the library, trustees, Betty Smith, and also Chris Brown. And so when I had been discussing with the committee or discussing with the chair back in the early summer, there was a discussion about coming up with a more defined mission for the committee, and so I had drafted up something and submitted it to the chair for discussion, and I think because of the way things were going, there hadn't been a meeting, I don't believe, to review it since then. So I pulled that up out of the archives and for the board's review, and kind of to create a discussion about whether or not the committee should go forward as is, or should be, charged with a new mission, or should be disbanded. Just trying to bring it to the board's attention for discussion and hopefully some resolution at some point in time going forward.
So, I guess, Walter, this draft that you put in is what you were talking about, the mission statement.
Yes.
So how do folks feel about that? I mean, it's pretty simple. Actually, would it make sense for me to read it so people in the audience know what we're talking about?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it is in the packet up on the website.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay. Well, if it's in the packet, then I'm not going to go through it. But I mean, I looked at it and I thought it was fairly concise. But Beth, you and Tim were on supporting that. What do you think? Does it cover the types of things that you were anticipating discussing? Does it go too far? Does it not include things? What's your general sense?
I mean, it pretty much, it does cover everything we talked about. I just didn't know if do we still need the committee now that we hired someone that is in charge of, it's a department head of facilities and highways, so I wasn't sure. Well, we haven't met since what, spring? Beginning of summer, maybe? It was spring.
Well, I think it can go either way. I guess the question would be, what do you have some sense as which way you think might be better?
The committee had a lot of pushback, which is why people had resigned in the spring.
Pushback in terms of?
The things that we had discussed last year during budgeting, and then the board chose to go differently. So I think some people thought that they're on a committee, they're putting in time, effort, and then the board chose to do differently, or the department head chose to do differently.
So they were concerned in terms of the advisory nature of the committee.
I think that kind of covers it, don't you think?
And that is the key word, advisory, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I have to say, I'm sorry, Matt, did you want to speak?
No, I mean, I think it's a good document. The only question I would have is, I want to make sure we wouldn't run into any turf battles on, since it does say facilities and grounds, with things like recreation fields and facilities up at the new development up there and stuff, who would have. But, both of those committees are advisory, so frankly,
Yeah.
it might be a moot point.
Yeah. Jim, what do you think? I mean,
Honestly, I don't know enough about it to really give an input. I mean, I hear what everyone's saying, and to be advisory only and just to meet and then make suggestions and have them not taken, I can see that problem. So I guess, what are we deciding? Do we continue with it or just dissolve it and move on? Is that what we're talking about as far as this goes?
I think it is, and I think that
Okay.
sort of framed the discussion. Do we feel that we can attract committee members and get better information and save the town money by having the committees help us sort and vet through some of these things, albeit that it is advisory? Or do we feel that we're at the point where we're better off with the paid help that we have and, tasking them with that responsibility? And I think that's really the gist of your point. Matt, hold on just a
Yeah,
second.
sure.
Am I missing anything on that, Walter, in terms of framing the discussion from your perspective?
Yeah, again, not knowing the history of the committees and so forth, but, as I outlined, in my draft, I think there's a purpose, especially on the facility side. I think, in terms of the highways are concerned, I think if we have a solid adopted road management plan, and the committee would simply endorse that and make sure that that plan got updated regularly and so forth, I think that would be valuable. But I don't necessarily think they would need to go any deeper, than just supporting that plan and supporting, the appropriations and so forth going forward, either, with the select board and the budget committee and so forth, so that we stick to the plan, basically. Facilities is certainly, especially when you're talking about historical buildings and things like that, people that have been involved in the community for many, many years obviously can be valuable to those types of committees, in terms of making, recommendations other than, I can go around and determine whether a roof needs to be repaired or, a building needs to be painted, but, some of the things in terms of, maintaining or expanding grounds or looking at what facilities the community might benefit from in the future. So it gets, submitted to a CIP, C, for instance, and ends up on a CIP, that type of thing, I think is a good community committee's function.
Okay, so I want to make sure, I'm sorry, Beth, go ahead.
So
Matt, we'll get back to
having
you.
been on this committee for 4 years, the first 2 years I was on the committee, I would go to the meeting every single, is the first Wednesday of the month, and no one ever showed up. I would go, I live in the same road, literally, I could walk down 5 houses, and
Used to be a
no one
highway.
would be there.
Facilities, they merged them a year or two ago.
We merged them because no one ever came, not anyone from town, department. I was there because I was a board representative. Then 2 years ago, we started
Maybe it was the
meeting.
personnel.
We started meeting 2 years ago, and that's when we did all we're going to do the siding and paint the library, because the library got mixed up with not being painted the year before. And then people got upset because of all the work we put into it. And then this year, we've only met, I think, once or twice. So literally, for 4 years, I've been on this committee, and we only worked last year. For 2 years, no one ever came to a meeting. So I don't know how much input you really think it's worth, because
We didn't get,
for 2 years, I was there by myself.
Well, certainly getting volunteers, as we all know, to either serve on elected or appointed committees is a struggle, So, you're right. People do have a forum as individuals to come to a select board meeting or come to the planning board meeting when they're reviewing the CIP and so forth. So there are avenues for the public to, kind of express their concerns, recommendations, et cetera, and whether or not a committee needs to be formed or continue to exist to be that in-between is, in this day and time is a good question,
Well, I think like the facilities themselves, I know when I was first elected the first time, I went to introduce myself, I went to all the different departments, and the library, I got a tour, and like, oh, this is where it leaks. And I think the people that work there, the department heads of those buildings, they know. I mean, they're there every day. I went to the police station, they're like, oh, the stairs need to be replaced. They know that. Now, a committee's not going to know as much as someone that's there every day.
Okay, so I think that's an excellent point. So let's hear from Matt, since we've been putting him off.
My question was simply, do we know if either of those committees were created through a warrant article, which we would be beholden to then go back on a warrant to dissolve?
I don't know that. I'd have to check.
If they were created by town vote, we'd have to go to a town vote to officially dissolve them, correct? Or we could just leave them unfilled.
Yeah.
I think they're elected, aren't they? It said,
Are they elected or
I don't
appointed?
know.
I think they're
appointed? Okay.
So if they're appointed, it's less likely that they're
Right.
official. But what we can check that as part of that. I guess what sort of struck me in between your comments and Walter's, let's just have an open discussion a little bit about how would we handle something like the building next door here? I mean, right now, in my view, it's sort of been adopted by our rec director, which is fine.
Right, but it's a facility, so really would fall under Chris.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of proposing, like Chris.
So I would think that if rec wants it, they would, I'm gonna say, the person in charge of rec is gonna call the person in charge of highway facility, and they're gonna figure out something to put on a warrant, or the CIP, or.
There should be a record, every building, Chris should go around and check and make a list of, okay, the roof needs to be replaced, or he needs to inspect every building, part of his job, I feel.
Okay, so you're sort of with Beth then in terms of really we should be using the paid help and department heads because you feel they have a better knowledge.
Department heads, if they have a problem inside the building or outside, report to Chris. Chris comes to Walter and us and decide what we're going to do about it.
So in the example I was talking about, then if, like, let's just say general repairs for this building, Chris would have to take care of that, as he said, he looks at it.
And a weekly or monthly
Right,
inspection.
because he's not just highway, it's
Right.
highway and facilities.
Got it. But then if we want to, as the rec department or the rec director wants to do some improvements to it, like add something more modern bathroom or this, that, or the other, then that would be the venue for him to work with Chris on the price and then bring it either to the CIP or to the budget. Is that what you're saying? Because I want to make sure I personally want to make sure we have some venue for stuff like that, where it's beyond just the, like you said, inspect the roof and do that. Somebody might say, maybe there's an addition we should put on, or this, that, or the other. And as long as we have a venue for that, I'd be comfortable with any approach, quite frankly. And if you think that that's covered that way, I'm happy with that.
I'm not sure how much the department, the highway facility department, is actually doing facility stuff. So I think that's something we need to look into, and there needs to be an allotment of time every week, even if it's like an hour or two, whatever. How much time, is, because it's not just highway, it's not just, plowing and grading and stuff. It's the facilities as well.
Well,
Yeah, and I think that, between myself and Chris, obviously I provide him support, which
of course.
I do for other department heads, but, I think he, has that understanding and has that, responsibility when, things need to be done add
Like the
facilities.
trees, I mean, so I just making
Yeah.
sure we have, before we say, okay, it's all, I would like to have, you know, an allotment of time every week that he can dedicate to facilities, whether it's, you know, changing a light bulb, I mean, we need these big ladders, I mean, it's something like, it's taking care of the facilities.
But it sounds to me, if I'm reading the board correctly, it sounds to me like we're leaning towards making this a department head slash highway facilities foreman responsibility. Doesn't mean other folks can't make suggestions or recommendations, but we feel this is the best way in terms of making sure stuff happens. Does
Yeah, it makes
anybody-
sense to me. I mean, I think when we made the move to that being a professional position, that makes perfect sense. You know, we don't have a group of people looking over the finance director's shoulder.
It's true.
So, I mean, there's the budget committee that has say over the town budget, but that's different from the
That's different
sort of
than doing
day-to-day
the
operations.
finances, yeah, yeah.
And then, I forget who made the point, but, you know, it's not hard to get a hold of somebody to provide input. If somebody sees that there's an aspect of one of our town facilities that needs attention, pick up the phone, send an email, do whatever, you know, stop by, so.
Jim, you seem to be nodding.
No, I
Are you
agree.
okay with what we talked about?
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree.
And Walter, do you have any problem with, you know, some of the suggestions that Beth made?
No, I don't know. That's pretty much how things are going on.
Okay, so it sounds like
Yeah,
we're,
great.
okay. Done deal then. Okay, we'll move on.
Thank you.
No, I think it was a good discussion and a discussion we needed to
And I
have.
want to thank everyone that was on the committee for their time and effort, you know, whether they resigned or they're still on the committee, it's appreciated by everyone.
You're right. Okay, next up is the task manager. This is our opportunity to look at what Walter's got on his list of to-dos and the relative priorities. Does anybody have any questions as to where he stands on some of these, or?
Not color-coded.
Yeah, yeah.
CIP was.
Yes,
Well-
I know.
It looks great though,
Well,
Walter, thank
his
you.
performance review's coming up. Think about that.
Get your highlighters out.
Next time we lease a copier, it'll be a color copy.
Oh,
There'll be
yes.
one in this building. It's not that expensive.
Okay, so seriously, I don't think this has changed much from the last meeting, but again, maybe you've thought about some more things, or maybe have some other thoughts in terms of how we prioritize? Or if not, we'll move on.
It's just an alarming amount of high priority issues, that's all.
Yeah, but some of those high
Yes, it is.
priorities are down at the bottom indicating.
That's true, there are some completed high
Yeah,
priorities,
so-
which is nice.
So
Well, I
I,
think because we haven't had this, you know, for so long
Yeah.
that, you know,
yeah,
like Bob said, you know, we have a lot of high priorities now,
yeah, you can't put them all.
right?
Yep.
Well, I think
Thank
we are
you,
making
thank you
progress.
for, Walter, really for tackling a lot of the big things. It's much appreciated.
Tackled over the years.
It should have been. It should have been.
Okay, I'm not hearing any feedback for Walter, so we're going to move on. So that will be the board committee reports. Does anybody want to report anything? I was going to report on the planning board, but we had that discussion already. And that, I have to say, I'm just really, I'll say it again, I'm just really looking forward to making some improvements like we discussed.
Yeah.
I think it can really help. I think it can really help the town. So if there's nothing else on that, we'll go to Citizens Forum. Tim, were you waiting to speak, perchance?
I wanted to mention that I'm looking into the excavator that was rented by the town. As you know, it was rented for a month and then re-rented for, or leased, excuse me, for a second month. And as near as I could tell, the lease was up, I've done some right to know, the lease was up on 9/2, it wasn't picked up till 9/7. However, in that interim, that excavator was over at Chuck Brown's alignment and was used to clean up the yard, et cetera. So I'm not clear yet, and I've submitted another long list of queries to the town administrator regarding this issue, whether the select board knew that it was being used privately, whether the company that leased it knew that it was being used privately, was it paid for by the person using it to use it for those 4 or 5 days, just what it is. And so I'm looking into it, because there's only one good answer, and that is that that person using it paid for it for those 4 or 5 days. I don't believe that happened, but I'm going to find out. It's just, if he used his position in order to get 3 or 4 days of 5 days of free use of it, that would be a real ethics issue for me. If no one knew he was using it, that would be a real ethics issue to me. Unfortunately, this gentleman has a small army watching him in this town. And unfortunately for me, they call me and want me to look into it. So I am looking into it. So I have submitted another list of issues to the town administrator, which I'm sure you'll get in the next day or so. I'm also wrote to the company that leased it to the town to see if they were aware that this was going on. I just want to find out. So I'd like you to know that I am looking into that. I hope I get some better answers than some I've gotten in the past. I particularly want to say on one of them, and that's the trailer that's in question that was given away. That trailer was worth several hundreds of dollars easily. There's one just like it on Route 43, almost to Deerfield, in Deerfield, almost to the Y there, 43 and 107. Almost identical, but a little smaller, $1,200. It's there today if you wanted to go look at it tomorrow. And the answer I got on that issue was that the foreman judged that the trailer had nominal, if any, scrap value. Now, that alone is ridiculous if you took a look at the fact that metal is so high. So if you looked at your financials, you will see, as of the last budget committee meeting, that where you had budgeted to have made $15,000 so far in metals, we've made $29,000. That's how valuable metal is right now. It's a big deal. If any scrap value, and determine the most cost-effective means of disposal was having it taken away by a town employee with no time expense charged to the town. So a trailer that was worth certainly hundreds of dollars, if not $1,000, was taken away by an employee. Now, you know that I have already told the town, and intend to push this, that violates an RSA. That there's an RSA that says if it's over $200 value, it's got to go out to bid, and it didn't. So anyway, those kind of answers, they're just giving me ammunition. So I hope on this issue with the excavator, I can get some honest answers. You know, I'm not stupid. I just want to know, did we know? If we didn't know, why? Was it paid for by him for those 4 or 5 days, or was he just using it? You know, it's fair questions, and I'm going to keep looking into this stuff, you know, as long as it keeps coming up, because I think there's a real issue there. Second off, Hal has alluded, and we had a pretty good meeting at the planning board. At the end, it got a little testy, and I'm sorry that happened. I felt that Hal thought that a number of people in the public and several board members spoke at the public. I don't think he was mad at me this particular time, but I do think that he was a little irritated and made a statement that that picking on, and I think most of the picking was that some of the department heads weren't very well prepared to explain where the money or whatever was going to come from. And if you look at the CIP, you will see that as a fact. You know, and stuff like it was pointed out by one actual member of the public in this case, that where I think $2.something million was going to be spent out of the the ambulance fund. In that period, we would only have $93,000 in the ambulance fund. So anyway, Hal made the statement that these are the reasons we lose people. And I took umbrage at that, and I'll tell you why. one employee bad hired by this select board, and some of you weren't here at that time, but by this select board, cost us 6 employees at minimum. 3, town finance, town clerk, and the best road person we've ever had, Peter. All left because of that one employee. And in the end, she left in disgrace. But, you know, I think we need to look at, you know, why we're losing people. Lastly, I would love, just from the meeting tonight, I would love to get about 20 people in here that 5 years, 10 years ago were all members of all of these committees you're talking about. And they've all gone away. And they've all gone back and gone away for the same reason. And it would be great fun to have them tell you that reason. Really would. Because there are very good reasons why you're having a hard time finding committee members. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim. Okay. So that's it for Citizens Forum. Walter, do we need to go into non-public?
Yes, before we do, I wanted to just hand out the budget. And I think it would be appropriate to, under correspondence, to recognize the 2 resignations and also the approval of the grant for the updating of the local emergency operation plan that was granted to the
That's to the
emergency
full page
management
of your
director.
packet. Make a motion
What kind of motion are you looking for, Walter?
I wasn't looking for a motion, I was just looking for an acknowledgement that
Oh,
those
we
would
should
be.
accept the,
accept it with regrets.
grant those.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Don't we normally vote on those, or do we just
Yes,
acknowledge?
or by consensus, yes.
Okay, so I think we want to accept with regrets both of Betsy's
Yes.
resignations.
And we appreciate all of her time and dedication to our town. I know she's still on some other committees, so
Yeah.
hope she continues to stay on them.
Yep, good. Good. Okay, do we want to vote on that? Yep, all those in favor? Okay, thank you. And Walter, what about the other one?
The, on the,
From Bob?
LEOP.
the LEOP, the local emergency operation plan, so the grant has been
Oh.
accepted and approved for $4,000. If you remember, we talked about this and
Right.
had a,
Oh, we can match her.
had a discussion.
Yep.
Yeah,
So do we need to
just an acknowledgement,
just acknowledge?
just
Okay,
acknowledge it. Yeah.
so we acknowledge it,
Acknowledge.
Thank you, Bob.
And thanks to Mr. Young for his hard work on it.
yeah.
And his nightly emails?
Yeah, almost.
We got one when we were here.
Good, good.
So I'll pass down the budget spreadsheets.
Thank you.
Again, even in light of the size, it's still hard to see because of the print, but in order to get it all in a
Oh, it's not my old eyes?
standard, well, I can't say, but I did just want to take a minute, as I said, because it can be confusing taking a look at all the columns, but just starting from left and moving right, we have the current or old account numbers, and then, of course, we have the account names, which in some cases have changed slightly, but generally they're the same. We have the 2018 budget and actuals, the 2019 and 2020 budget. We also included the 2021 requested budget, and then, of course, the approved budget, which was a default budget. We have the actual expenses through the end of September. And then beyond the thick black line that bisects the property here, we have the new account numbers, which again are more in line with the Department of Revenue's chart of accounts. And then The new description is, as I said, I think Cheryl did a great job. If it isn't self-explanatory, it has an explanation under it, which hopefully will be beneficial as you go through and look at it. But also, beneficial for for the budget committee and so forth as they go through the process as well. The arrows that you see under the description basically are referencing the items that are included in the total, just so it's not too confusing, but anything above the arrow is included in the total. So, for instance, if you look at under contracted services of the town administrator, you have American Archive. So the contracted services is made up of just that one particular item. So on and so forth through the rest of the budget. We did make some changes in terms of reallocating things, especially I felt it's appropriate for some personnel to be allocated to the departments they work for. So, for example, under executive, Linda's salaries and benefits, Susan's salaries and benefits are distributed amongst the land use department based on a percentage that we felt was appropriate. There's also Carol's position that used to be under executive that's been distributed amongst the assessing and building department, and now select board administration. Postage has always been a single line item. We've tried to distribute that appropriately amongst the departments that seem to use the most postage so that we can, again, reflect more accurately the cost of these, departments, whether it be personnel or expenses, et cetera. So I'm sorry it does add to the confusion, but I think it's a process that I think is going to give us a better budget in the long run. So continuing to move to the right, after new description, we have the 2022 department head request, which I support all the way through after meeting with them and discussing and making changes as we go through. So that's their budget as well as my budget. Then as we go forward, we'll have, the BOS budget, the select board's budget, and then the budget committee's budget. In terms of looking at differences going across, I thought it was important to not only compare this to the default budget, but to compare it to the 2021 request, which really gives you a reflection of what expenses may have changed from 2021 that are projected for 2022. So those percentages and differences are carried out, as you'll see in the different columns, versus the default, and then versus the requested 2021 budget. So, as I say, I wouldn't work on it late at night because you'll end up probably cross-eyed. But I believe if we haven't already, it will be distributed electronically as well. So, if you have the ability to project your projector on your widescreen TV, maybe hopefully you can sit there and go through the budget that way.
Make some popcorn, fun for the whole family.
Absolutely. Come on, gather around, kids.
Walter, along those lines, would you be amenable to passing out a spreadsheet, the spreadsheet itself, so we can manipulate numbers if we want, or put our own numbers in someplace? Or how would
Only
you?
if ordered to do so.
Oh, okay.
Again, this is Cheryl's document, and I'd really like to,
So no tweak at home.
it's going to be the one we work from, okay?
Oh, I understand
So no matter,
that, yeah.
no matter what, what you might do to it, this is what we're going to work from in terms of, the final budget document. Because otherwise, it's just going to be difficult to,
I think Hal is purely suggesting, in terms of being able to manipulate data on our own to better understand it and digest it.
oh, sure.
So a quick couple of clicks, and I can have every cell that went down turn red.
Sure. Oh, yeah, I'm not saying a problem, I'm just talking about how we're going to be able to manage this with
Oh,
the right.
we-
with the
you're
right
gonna
information.
use this. No, there's no question on
Yeah.
that, but like when I'm sitting there at night trying to do this, if I wanna, add a column to put my tallies as to what
Sure.
I might wanna suggest as a difference, or as Matt said,
Oh, yeah.
color-coded my
Yeah, we were
way.
planning on distributing it in Excel anyway.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking. We need to maintain.
Keep them
actually,
at home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I'll keep it on my computer.
That's
but-
what I mean.
Yeah, but, that,
Because it can get very confusing, as you can imagine.
yeah, no, we have to stick with one thing, and really that actually, that raises the other point that maybe didn't come up, or maybe we didn't discuss it a whole lot. Like we said on the CIP, there was some confusion about, what was the correct numbers and facts and different things. If we could have, in terms of what we're looking at and working on in the budget, similar to the CIP, we put that on the website with the documentation so that everybody's working off the, quote, same set of numbers. So whatever we submit to the budget committee, can we do something like that, or is that an issue?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
Well,
Once the board has adopted their budget,
yeah,
that'll get passed on, directly to the budget committee.
including like the backup information.
The backup information from the department heads, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But the majority of that's going to be included
in
in this document, which is
will.
why as you see it now.
well, there is a lot of text.
A lot in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of text. If it isn't self-explanatory, it has an explanation,
Okay.
you know.
Well, why don't we wait on that discussion till we have a chance to look through it? The main thing is, for me anyway, is that we have enough information, as does the budget committee, that we're discussing the merits of the numbers, not the numbers themselves, or the facts associated with them. I
Yeah,
won't-
and any recommendations any board member has about additional detail, that should be added to the spreadsheet, just, pass it on to Cheryl,
Okay.
and so you can just amazingly pull it to life.
Yeah, she's good.
Well, I just want to say that, given the amount of work and actually the numbers that are here, any questions as to whether or not Walter and all these different departments are dedicated to doing the best they can without going too high on the budget is put to rest. This is an excellent first swing, and
Yeah.
it's going to make our job a lot easier.
It's, certainly been a
There's a lot of
good,
detail.
positive, conscious effort. And again, my direction has always been, build a budget that you feel is needed to continue to serve the community in the method that you have, and if you can, just a little better too. So I think they've responded to that.
Okay, well, we need to digest it.
Yeah, again, hopefully, come next Tuesday, we'll start the process, and you'll have it committed to memory by then.
So who's up on Tuesday?
So, because there is a police commission meeting, we agreed to have the police department, followed by the land use department,
Got it.
which covers, some different commissions and committees and so forth. And then, more than likely, we'll move to the fire department at that point in time, and that might consume our entire 3 hours, which I think is
Enough.
a max cap. And again, at any point in time during any of the sessions, I have a number of different budgets that are under my purview, which is anything from welfare to, community donations to legal, to all those things that I can fill in and get your input on. And so we'll try to streamline the process and make it as efficient as possible.
Good, good. Okay, so that's the budget. So we have some reading to do on that, that's for sure. You ready to go into non-public? Do we
Yes,
wanna
I do
take
have a
break?
couple of items to review with the board under,
Take a break.
Yeah,
under letter A and E.
yeah. So we'll vote to go into non-public. We'll have,
RSA, da-da-da, 91.
yeah, what are we going in for?
A and E according to the agenda.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
So I'll make a motion to enter non-public session under RSA 91A:3, 2A and E.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Roll call vote. Jim?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And Hal?